to all listeners, apologies in advance for any lag time or a little bit of issue with the connection, because this is an international show and also with some bad weather. So please bear with us. It's only intermittent, and hopefully you'll enjoy the commentary and the comments and our enthusiasm as always. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues, listeners. Here we are again, and we're actually back on a Saturday for the Saturday show. So Steve Dickson, as always, great sparring partner and guest. So welcome again, Steve. And what a beautiful backdrop, my friend. You've been travelling again.
I made an aircraft again this week, Chris. Yes, yep. That's 2 weeks in a row. We've been travelling, and boy, does it feel good. So we're in Langkawi this weekend. Yep, back at our weekend home.
Very nice, my friend, and it's lovely to see you and the family travelling and seeing you in your masks and on the aircraft, and how many people are sitting on the aircraft.
It was a busy. Well, yep, you saw. Yeah. Look, busy flight. I mean, one of our colleagues at Skylight, you saw the other day, Peter, I think, travelled over to Nice with his wife Helen, and the EasyJet aircraft had 21 passengers on board. Which was, well, I guess from EasyJet's perspective, pretty disappointing. But more critically, from an industry perspective, is frankly very worrying. And in what should be one of the busiest weekends of the holiday year. Conversely, my wife and I flew to Langkawi from Kuala Lumpur. The aircraft was 737-900 ER, and 170 passengers on 190 seats. So pretty good load factor. I'd be pretty impressed if I was Malindo Air, and all conforming, wearing the mask, nobody complaining, no kind of anti-maskers. We all did as we were told, and we got on rather well. So the rules, follow the rules, and you can find out you got more liberties if you follow the rules than if you don't. It would appear.
I think that's it. That's it, Stephen. We started some of the recordings for the ACHL digital event this week, and people were talking about stick and carrot, and influencing and trying to please everybody, and I came up with another term, which was a common sense baseball bat that should be left on people's tables. So when there was a decision as to whether or not there should be a strict rule, just have a look at it and put the rule in so it makes it clear for everybody.
Indeed. Yep, absolutely.
From people who've been flying this week, most of them to Greece and Portugal, including one of my brothers, and the aircrafts unfortunately were quite empty, but they've all said what a great experience they had from a cross section of carriers, and most of them are very, very impressed with the hygiene practices they've been put in. So I think that's good news. That's great that people are doing that.
I think it's great to see. Look, it's very reassuring. I mean, we've seen some advances in that, and actually this week, I can't remember what publication it was, Chris, but there was a publication. I think it was in the Philippines, across the ACAP member airlines, which is the Association of Air Carriers of the Philippines. And they were rating them in terms of their compliance with COVID-safe requirements.
Yeah.
So, interestingly, airlines are normally rated on service quality, or on-time performance, or the airline safety ratings. And on this occasion, they're now being rated by COVID compliance. So, interesting to see how kind of the wheel is turning with the different metrics and optics of conformance and reward.
It's amazing, isn't it? Anything to get an advantage, or to have a league table, or to make others do what they should done. So it should do. So it's not a bad thing, because the more consistency, the more consumer confidence, the more people.
Absolutely. I was just talking to some colleagues this week as well, just about the airline refund process. So there's a number of carriers here in Asia that have come under immense pressure and immense public kind of scrutiny for their lack of conformance to norms, if you like, in terms of the refunds. And I said, well, actually, one of the parallels, or one of the proxies that I would draw in terms of good governance and good measurement of that refund conformance is to the UK Civil Aviation Authority, who at the end of June, if you remember, published a league table of refund compliance.
Yeah.
And three of the bottom airlines were, we can say it's public, was Etihad, Malaysia Airlines, and Turkish Airlines. At the top end of that compliance were the likes of Jet2, Ryanair, and EasyJet, who many would have thought historically were the ones that were trying to shirk the responsibility. That just goes to show, one should act properly in times like this because consumers will remember it. So absolutely, Chris, I totally subscribe to that school. I think the more we kind of go down this path, customers will have other avenues to scrutinize other than just on-time performance or TripAdvisor ratings.
Yep. I think, and the more the better as well. And ironically, I got post this week from a Christmas present from the kids for me and Kathy to go to a show up in town, and they sent us an announcement saying that it was going to be postponed, but they've now sent us when it will happen, and we've now got a proposal for March 2022.
I'm not sure where I'll be in March 2022, Chris. So if you and Kathy accept that, then you're much bolder than I in terms of committing with conviction to your whereabouts than I would be. But good luck.
Yeah, no, but it also, when I looked at it, first thing I thought was, oh, for goodness sake, who knows what's going to happen in 2022?
Exactly.
But then I thought, and I know a lot of people that are on the stage, and I just thought, well, if I just say yes, that's okay. At least that's keeping some money back into the into the industry. So but please God, things will start to pick up. Now we try and keep things positive, Steve, and we must. And I've got to say, all of the people that we've currently had on in preparation for the ACHL digital event have been absolutely superb. We've been having them on 2 at a time, so we're covering representatives from airports, airlines, ground handling agents, forwarders, support services like IT platforms, pooling for the ULDs, also training organisations, and also some specialist organisations. So we're going through the whole chain, and it's been so positive. And having 2 on at a time, it's great without any preparation to see people endorsing each other and to see people backing each other up. And, even an airport with a GHA and a GHA with a forwarder, it's really, really encouraging. And the good news is, my friend, because of your candid stage performances, you're going to get an invite as well to give a wrap-up feedback with such well-known personalities as Des Fatanis and Stan Rafe. So between the 3 of you, there'll be a very balanced approach to the content and also the commitment. And what we're doing as part of it is everybody's been encouraged to identify 3 areas that they would voluntarily and let's say enthusiastically commit to collaborate, and 3 things that they would like to see other parties who enable them to do better to collaborate on. So we look forward to your comments on that. And also on the 1st of September, I'm doing an airport show with Dubai. And that's all about the passenger side of development initiatives and consumer confidence. So again, I'm sure you'll be able to comment on that next Saturday. So as always, Stevie boy, lovely to have your
lots to talk about, Christopher.
Yeah. Now with that direct approach, unfortunately, Rolls-Royce now add into the practical realities of the industry and what's coming over the next 7 months.
Yeah, I don't look. No surprise, Chris. Rolls have had I think the last quarter results they were very clear in their guidance that the impact of COVID would be pretty severe. I think at that stage they announced 1,200 redundancies or 1,200 exits in terms of the current staff count. What they've now announced is therefore no surprise, which is another 1.3 billion pounds in cost reductions required to see that business through to sustainability and out the other side of COVID. Let's remember, Chris, that a number of the manufacturers, for example, Airbus with the 330neo, there is no power plant choice. It's a Rolls-Royce engined aircraft. So there are a number of OEM programs that commit Airbus fully to the program, where on occasion the client airlines have might previously enjoyed a choice power plant, but on some programs they've not. It's the same with the CFM engine, NGs, for example, or the Max. So there are a number of commitments that I suspect that Rolls-Royce have got. Programs like the 330 Neo have not been as successful as one would have necessarily wanted them to be, and at the same time, Rolls is particularly predicated towards providing power plants for wide body, long haul machines. Compared to the likes of Safran, CFM, etc., that are more likely, i.e., to deliver to the narrow bodies, which I suspect, Chris, is from this fallout, is that you'll see much more, ultra long range, narrow body aircraft operations than we will do with wide one. We've seen that already. We've seen that, across. People are flying back around Europe again. We're flying back around Asia Pacific as I am here. I mean, a 45-minute flight. I mean, it's nothing. I could have driven it in 3.5 hours. But we're flying domestically or regionally. That doesn't take Rolls-Royce power plants to do that. And therefore, no surprise that Rolls are managing those programs. But I mean, Rolls have got big facility here in Asia and Singapore, obviously in the UK. And also the US. So sad to see, what I view as one of the excellent, first class British brands in excellence, product and quality, having to go down this route. But there we are. Nobody's excused.
Yeah, no, definitely. And in your neck of the woods, AirAsia, Tony making another announcement that if things progress, there'll be further downsizing. So I think this term, like I know you and me prefer to call it practical sizing rather than downsizing and right sizing and all the previous trendy transformation.
Well, it's because they should have done this years ago, Chris. These companies have been getting fat and happy for quite some time. Now I'm not saying that's the everybody's in that boat, but there are a number of firms that, because employment and because labour costs are relatively inexpensive compared to their peers or their competitors, they employ a much larger number of people than required to deliver their product and their business. So I'm not surprised that AirAsia, Thai Airways, Garuda, Singapore Airlines, for example, in this part of the world, are having to make massive cuts and deep cuts, as sad as it is to their workforce, because they unfortunately have been lazy for quite some time.
Yeah, no, it's true enough. And it's a good time now to reflect. But what I'm saying is it's constant bang, 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 bang of the many different drums, coming towards people, coming now into the another winter in in the Northern Hemisphere, and also Christmas time. Not much good news, I don't think, is going to be coming out until after we get across Christmas.
We won't see any good news, I think, Chris, now until spring next year.
Yeah.
We've been looking, as you and I have been trying to find, we've been looking for some planned positives. Now, there are some positives. It's great to see, for example, the agility of airlines. So, for example, Scoot this week. Scoot was the first narrow-body operator of the 320 series to remove all of the cabin interior and seats to accommodate cargo in cabin. And I think that's bloody marvellous. And what they've done, therefore, is responding to a need. They're saying, we're not going to get passengers and back to bums on seats for quite some time. And therefore, what we're going to do is adapt our model. This is not something we've done historically, but Airbus have been really helpful. And they still have I must say, call out to my old adversaries at the Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore, that I used to have many a challenge and discussion with, not for the wrong reasons, for the right reasons, because we were coming at things for good reason, from either side, and met with some equilibrium in the middle, which is the point of a regulator and a private operator. And so I must CAS, the Singapore Airlines Group, and Airbus have done excellent in that, Chris. So I think as much as we're seeing some depressing news more broadly, there are these little nuggets of success, these little green shoots that we mustn't forget. Another example would be, Malaysia Airlines. They announced their domestic and regional schedule. It's not today, earlier this week, including some of the long haul flying being brought back to London. And that's no easy feat. I think it takes a lot for a carrier to commit capacity back to the market, which has been so volatile, over the last few months. And therefore, I think that's saying we've got some positive information from the government that borders will start reopening. We've had some positive regional engagement from the ASEAN community that our borders and some trans-border commerce and travel is necessary. And thirdly, in this part of the world, Chris, where I am, in this beautiful view here, I look behind me and I apology for it. The place where we are in northwest Malaysia, 20% of our GDP per annum comes from tourism.
Yep.
And therefore we can't hold still. In Philippines, it's 60%. In Thailand, it's 35%. So look, we've got to get smarter at this.
100%, Steve. And in contrast, if you look over my head, singing in the rain, there's been nothing but rain this week. So seeing your back,
I'm surprised you're not in Portugal. Given the air bridge is not available to you, Chris.
Yeah. Well, that's planned for a few weeks' time. Hopefully, touch wood. So. And give
Kathy's in charge of that.
Yeah. She'll be sorting that one out. On this vaccine subject, Stephen, I know you've always got a good, honest comment. It's important that these task forces are in place, and it's important that governments and everybody else starts to look to see where we can catch up and where we should improve. So your impression of where the industry stands at the moment with its capability on pharma, and like I said earlier, the understanding that we're now going to have to look at how do we accommodate it on the import side, not just primarily on the export side. So I'm sure you've got a little bit of feedback on that.
Chris, I'm surprised that you think I'd have feedback on anything. No, look, the reality is, Chris, if you think back, I mean, you've been in this industry a few years longer than I have, and you've got a few more scars and whirlwinds to show for it than I would do. That's a positive thing, by the way. In terms of, but if you think, when I started back in the industry, which was in 98, 99, so 22 years ago, the whole cold chain management, the whole around cold chain and security around pharma, it was really pretty mediocre. It didn't really exist. And that was because there was no actual secure requirement. It's because it was an end-to-end logistics chain that made sure as soon as that bloody thing came off the aircraft, it went straight into a truck outside and it moved out the warehouse. And it wasn't even, it touched the warehouse for, well, I'd say naively, for as short a time as possible. But for as long a time as possible is for us to charge for it touching the floor. But the reality is, Chris, that this is all very new to us. Think about CE4 capability and performance certification, and the pharma warehouse in the world. How many terminals do you know that are fully pharma, capable compliant? It's actually very few.
Yeah.
So the reality is that we're quite green at this in industry, and I think that we've got to bloody pull our socks up. And if we, the industry, want to benefit from the delivery of a solution to help restore confidence to air travel, then we bloody better well help ourselves in fixing kind of the breaks in the chain to deliver a much better kind of pharma and cold chain kind of security logistics chain. That's my point. But also just one other point is we are, I think, still so far from that mass vaccination capability that we've got to get people flying before then. So this is no panacea. Don't see a vaccine as a panacea. Whatever industry's got to do before that vaccine becomes available, we have to do. So, we've got some time on our hands to get our finger out and fix the pharma and cold chain capability. But before that, I think actually what we've got to do is restore confidence in other ways to the consumer for the passenger.
Yeah, no, 100%. And not saying, and we're not suggesting the panacea approach either, but as confidence starts to get knocked, as confidence starts to improve, you're going to start to get a balance. But this vaccine issue is going to be a big one. And, now, looking back, fair play to IATA for introducing CEIV. The GDP platform was always there, but now people are going to take it a lot more seriously. And Vaz also put a question, which was farmer facilities. Are we ready? And do we even know the capability and capacity so that it can be distributed accordingly? So Vaz, you're bang on there. And that's something that I think people need to start to look at. Another person, Salem, we'll have to get back on is Rob Williams to see how things are doing, because he's in that line, and it'll be interesting to see how things have developed from his perspective with his selection of airports and airlines. Now, with the vaccine issue and the panacea, you're quite right. Now, something else is Ian has put a message across, or a question, and what he's saying is there's been so much impact on redundancies on the passenger side, but it's pretty obvious that the cargo side is going to be ever more present in the next 7 to 8 months. So what Ian is saying is that, is there any way now for preparatory training or foundation courses for passenger related staff to be available to help on the cargo side if and when there is a second spike, and if and when there's impacts on personnel levels, so that people could step across? And in addition to that, Stephen, there's one for airports and authorities, especially domestically. Can there be a transfer of qualified staff with safety and security background checks being allowed on any airport where there is a need? So they're almost like a reservoir or a trucking in of resource if it was necessary.
I'll answer the second question first, Chris, if I may.
Yeah.
Because this has been something that has done my head in for many years. So I have held an airside pass since 1998.
Yep.
In those days, you remember, Chris, it was the British Airports Authority, the BAA.
Yeah.
And for me to get approval to go to sort of an Edinburgh issued pass to go to Stansted, it was an easy process. I could get multiple airport access.
Yeah.
And my pass got me access to Edinburgh, Glasgow, Stansted, Heathrow, Gatwick, Aberdeen.
Exactly.
We've regressed since then, I'm afraid, my friend. My Edinburgh Airport pass now gets me only access to
Edinburgh
Airport. Now, why is that? It's because it's a private operator now.
Yeah.
The operator of Edinburgh Airport, Edinburgh Airport Limited, owned by GIP, Global Infrastructure Partners. Although they hold a share in Gatwick, it's an Edinburgh Airport pass. The Department for Transport equally are culpable in this process.
Yes.
And the DFT, I don't know, I was at HAL ID Centre. Big call out to anybody listening for HAL ID Centre. You're all wonderful ladies and you're all wonderful gentlemen that work there. However, I have to say it's the most bureaucratic office I've ever entered in my 38 years on this planet. So having held an airport pass for many years and been through many security checks, and also held developed vetting, which is a high level of security clearance in the UK for government type work. I don't say that sort of arrogantly. I say that because some of our clients are government based. That's required. Do you know how difficult it is to fulfill the obligations of that? So I hear people in that require. So porting people around, even from the same company, whether it be Swissport, from Stansted to Heathrow, or from Heathrow to Manchester, is bloody hard work. That's got to be fixed. The pass authority has got to be changed to the government or the regulator and not to the individual airport. I would say the same thing as being sort of the ECAC, the European Civil Aviation Conference of members, which is the security group of European member countries, should be consistent. One shouldn't have to prove their credentials across the board. But we have to go to maintain a baseline. So I hear everybody, and I think, as we pick up capacity in some markets, what's to stop? For example, EasyJet moving crew, from a Stansted base to a Germany base, or vice versa. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Anyway, that's that one dealt with. Your first point, Chris, was really about moving people from cargo, from the passenger business into the cargo business, and the transition program support that. I think, to be fair, mean, I worked for Servicair many years ago, and we've got clients at Skylight Aviation that are Menzies, WFS. We work with for client airlines with Donata and Swissport. So we are agnostic. We work across the board. What I've seen certainly is that I think a lot of that already exists. To be fair, I see businesses like Donata, Swissport, and Menzies to be three of the four, particularly that are strong in the passenger side. WFS has historically been stronger in cargo than passenger, but it's pretty strong in the passenger side. They have been able to move people across into other sections of the business. What I would say is that maybe there is a transition kind of program or set of skills that an employer looks for that may not always be readily available in the cargo side as a passenger, and therefore it's about matching skills to a role. So I wouldn't say cargo is for everybody, Chris. I say that looking at you straight down the line. I'm more of a passenger man than you, and you're certainly more of a cargo man than me. That's no bad thing. It's horses for courses. Some run well in the soft, some run well in the firm. But yes, absolutely. I think for any decent firm worth their salt, they have to be agile and flexible enough to move their staff to where the work is.
Yeah, and I think the point that was being made, and I had a session with Robert Fordry and John Batten this week, and they both concurred with what you said about multitasking and multi-skilling their people, which is true. But what I was talking about, and what Ian has also mentioned, is the fact that if there is another outbreak and if people have to quarantine and you end up with a complete shift being put on quarantine for whatever reason, then where would you get those resources, especially when you're getting ghost flights coming in and you're getting unscheduled charters coming in? And would it be possible now in advance, whereby people are being displaced and they've got quite a bit of time on their hands, to actually train them up in a theoretical principle, so if they were available, then they could get an on-site verification?
Well, the one thing I would say, Chris, is the unions have to come to the party here as well. We need to stop this conversation about demarcation.
Yes.
That has existed for as long as I've been in the industry, and probably from when you started in the industry.
Yeah.
Demarcation is not helpful. Demarcation, for those not in the know, is simply about saying, well, I'm the union responsible for these members that do baggage handling, and I'm the union responsible for these members that does ramp loading, and I'm the union responsible for these members that does passenger handling. That in 2020, post-COVID, is not going to help anybody. What we have to do is get rid of the segmentation and have flexible agreements to allow people to work across the previous demarcation kind of circles or lines. That, I think, will require a whole scale kind of approach by the union leadership, which I'm not sure is there right now. And I'd encourage members listening to this to start encouraging those conversations.
Yeah, and that's part of this, from crisis to care. Everybody now needs to put aside all those blocking arguments and all those self-protectionist approaches, and now start working together for the good of the community, because it's definitely going to be a tough 6-7 months.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, something else which was a first for me, Stephen, and I'm sure we're going to get a real honest feedback on this one. I'm looking forward to this, actually. During the week, some colleagues that I haven't seen for a long time, they asked if I'd like to go out for a bite to eat. So we went out as couples, social distancing, did everything. The location was fantastic. And I hadn't even realised, but because it was during the week and it was in the late afternoon, we were in a lovely location. And
I was paying for your lunch.
Yes, and not only that, but when I looked at the invoice, the bill at the end, to see 5% VAT on food, and then to see a discount on each one of the head count for food, it was incredible, amazing.
Chris, I won't hold back. You've given me an opportunity to comment on something that's close to my heart. Look, I'm a bit of a cynic here, not for the wrong reason, but I suspect, just challenging the thoughts of those that have suspected or believed or portrayed or propagated
Go on,
that
son. You're on a roll.
COVID-19
Go
is
on,
a
son.
dangerous disease. It's no more dangerous than crossing the road, because there are more road deaths in the UK than COVID-19. There are more cancer deaths every day than COVID-19. There is more dengue deaths in Malaysia than COVID-19. What I would say is, when you tell me that it's dangerous to go out of your house and eat dinner in a restaurant or be in crowded places, until such a time as the Chancellor of the Exchequer puts my tax pounds to pay for your lunch or your dinner, and suddenly then it's okay, as restaurants have said, and I think it's great, people out there, I'm not against that, to suddenly say that they've done more business than in the preceding 12 months on a daily basis. That strikes me as slightly hypocritical. It's now safe when the taxpayer pays, but the day prior to that, it was not safe. I think you need to take a good hard look at yourselves.
Well, right. I think that one has been, I don't think you've camouflaged your opinion or your approach to that, Stephen, but it's also something now that people are going to also have to address with furlough and having people laid off and not doing anything. I also think now's an opportunity, especially with this crisis to care focal point, is if there isn't enough of the work that they've been trained and paid to do that's available, if somebody is being paid now not to work but to protect their position, do you think there's an opportunity? Hold on a second. Do you think there's an opportunity for almost, and I know this is a little bit off the wall here, but like the old national service, whereby people could actually support things that needed to be done because of their skills match and make them feel part of this whole community concept?
It depends who's funding it.
Well, we know who's going to be funding it.
No, absolutely not.
If the government, no, hold on a second. If the government is already paying people to stay away because there's not enough work, then that same money doesn't have to be.
Then unfortunately, Chris, look. I mean, there's no money tree. Private sector needs to get people back to work. Schools need to get children back to school. Offices need to get people back to offices. The transport providers need people back on the trains and the buses to fund them. Airlines need passengers back on aircraft to pay for them. There is no continual handout. This global crisis will continue to grow and become worse. The more that the state continues to excuse the funding of people that can't go back to work because of a disease that is largely now contained. I accept there are still breakouts in other parts of the world, in some parts of the world, and localized breakouts that we need to control. We must protect those at risk, at high risk of COVID-19 deaths or serious illness. What we cannot continue to do is have the taxpayer continue to fund activities that for businesses and an economy that was previously sound pre-COVID.
Yeah. No, you've made your point very clear. What I'm trying to say is that if that funding is already being given to people to keep them at home and keep them safe,
has to stop.
Yeah.
The funding has to stop.
Just 1 second. But until it stops, one of the options would be to utilise those parties' times better by helping in other areas that need that additional support but don't have it. So at least the payments wouldn't just be going in to an empty trunk just to keep people off of work.
Well, again, I guess
it's not
like
also good for society. It's not good for culture.
No, I agree, Chris. The problem is then, how do you switch that off?
Yeah, it would need to be.
The society then become dependent on that resource being funded by the state. I don't think that's a good place for us to be. And what I like is a tight rein on government, a tight rein on their extension of their controls on the people to use their own free private enterprise to create opportunity, to create investment, to create ability to do things. What we need is some sensibility back in the market, back in discussion. And remember, when we talk to, think about our listeners and our groups, these are people that are seriously affected by media spin, by the whole kind of, negativity that surrounds COVID-19. And what we want is to get actually people back into jobs that matter, not into jobs that are subsidized by the taxpayer because there's an alternative.
Yeah, and Steve, I agree with you. I agree with you because it's tough for people, but it's also tough. The thing that I'm liking to see now is people are actually saying, "I'm pleased to be back at work. I enjoyed
Absolutely.
it, but now it's time." So the general feeling and the general motivation and engagement of every individual, they need to have a purpose. They need to do something.
Exactly.
What I'm saying is those displaced parties who have got that feeling now and are sensing another layoff, I just feel it would be better that if there were some identifiable shortfalls or shortages or support that was necessary. So you look at some of the cabin crew when they were on furlough, they went and did support work in hospitals. I met two people that worked for airlines and they were doing support work in hospitals. Now they got so much satisfaction from that, and hats off to them. But I just think in some areas where people need that support and they're not getting it, and people could still be laid off on quarantine, etc. If there's already a payment being made to a certain proportion of society, then help that proportion or give that proportion an opportunity to do something to make themselves feel good. That's just my
I don't disagree, Chris, but I think that payment has to stop. That payment has to stop, and it has to stop very soon.
Which we're going to see the impacts of that in the next few months. Now, Stevie, right, with all that said, and with lots of the issues that are going to come about, that I've got to say, and I hope it continues, and I'm pretty sure it will, the amount of positive reflection on what people have already done under extreme circumstance is something that will be a wave of support and positivity that will take us through this next period, provided everybody starts to look now at, if something happens, this is what we have to do. If something doesn't meet this particular target, these are the actions you must take. The clarity and the decisiveness and the consistency must start coming to the fore now. And I think that is so important from our side. So all of the positive moves that EASA, ICAO, the representative bodies have done, it's now proven that they can do it. Digitization, less paperwork, that's got to be pushed and driven. So all of the people that seem to be making a career or making an impact by being a blocker rather than an enabler, we need to say goodbye to that group of people, and we need to start focusing on doing things differently.
I agree, and also, Chris, some of the lesser known industry bodies. I mentioned ACAT earlier, which is the Air Carrier Association of the Philippines, but there are others like BAR, the Board of Air Representatives, which exist in most countries around the world, and they're doing a lot of work behind the scenes to try to lobby government and lobby representatives of the broader community to reopen business, commerce, borders. Border closures have become a political aspect. It's become a political thing. It's not actually about, control on an epidemiological basis of the disease.
Yeah.
It's about politics. Yeah. And even within countries like the United Kingdom, a country of 4 nations, and Australia, a federation of 7 states, or 7 states and territories, I should say. There now is a real challenge around actually getting out of the political sphere and moving more to saying, look, this is hugely damaging, whether you're left wing, right wing, centre ground, liberal, Labour, whatever you might well be. We've got to actually all get back in this together. And I think therefore bodies like BAR and others and have done some pretty decent work here in trying to lobby their respective states and communities, councils, state governments, federal government, etc., and trying to reopen this stuff. So I think we're only going to see that continue. I think we will have to see much more of a joined up approach between some of the regulators. I don't think EASA have done yet far enough than the Kubernetes. We'll see the UK come up against their final kind of Brexit trade negotiation in the next couple of months. The UK is likely to exit without a deal. What does that mean for EASA? Continued membership of the EASA and ECAC and the EU institutions there. What will then happen in terms of those political discussions? This is not going to get any easier. We've got an election in November in the United States. Choice between a 74-year-old incumbent and a 77-year-old alternative. I wouldn't be wanting to make that choice myself. Thank goodness I don't have a vote in the US. So there's lots of big political stuff coming up, Chris, that could really hamstring or screw up this whole recovery in terms of the air travel industry to COVID-19.
No, 100%. So an opportunity again, bring out the old common sense baseball bat and start doing things it doesn't matter who you are. The average Mr., the average Miss, the average lad, the average girl, anywhere, any nation, any colour, any religion, logic and common sense got to start making sense. And for the
media, see more of it. Absolutely.
Stop filling people full of all this negativity and making them worry and making the anxiety levels even more. Let's start being positive and working together.
Let's start singing in the rain.
Exactly. Whether you're singing in the rain or looking at a beautiful backdrop.
There we go. Look at that. Yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad.
To each to his own. One man's food's another man's poison.
Indeed. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Let's keep it going. I'll see you next week, and
look forward to it. I hope so before then.
Yeah, where will you be? Where will you be next week? I just, it's like what's his name? Wicker's World.
Probably Alan Wicker. There's Alan. Actually, Michael Palin re-released on BBC iPlayer for those in the UK. BBC iPlayer. Michael Palin Around the World in 80 Days. I watched it last week back to back. It was absolutely fabulous.
Yeah, he's a character. He's brilliant. And
I'll see you next week.
The last one, Terry's comment. What a joy to be back on an aircraft heading to the Greek islands. Everybody needs and deserves a holiday. More of you need to do the same.
Here, here.
Very fair play to you, my friend. And also to my brother Kieran, who's out in a tiny little island, Ikistri. Hope you're having a great time. See you next week, Steve. Salem.
Chris, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Cheers now.
See ya.